And then to see the arachnoid, you have to come in between these sulci and kind of carefully pull up. And it's really difficult to do, and I may not be able to do it. Come on. There we go. There's some arachnoid right there. Yeah. So that would be arachnoid. And then the pia adheres so tightly that you can't even pull it off. Okay? Okay, now. Okay, so we've got the frontal lobes. We've got the parietal lobes. We've got the occipital lobes. And then out here on the sides, we have the temporal lobes. And we're not going to worry about, they did a little sliver here just so you could see the white versus gray matter, which is kind of pretty. But that's the temporal, and we're not going to worry about the insula on these guys. We've got the longitudinal fissure that separates the two hemispheres. We're not going to worry about finding the central sulcus or the lateral sulcus on these guys. It's just not very clear. Okay. So we've got the cerebellum here on the back, and then I'm going to flip it so we look at the underside. So frontal lobe is right here, and you can see really pretty olfactory tract, and then the olfactory bulbs, these guys. So the tract comes like this, and then these are the bulbs. And you can see they're nice and big. Sheep have pretty good smell. So those are the olfactory bulbs. These are the optic nerves right here, and they would cross right there at the optic chiasm. And then when we look down here, this is our pituitary gland right here. And then I'll cut this, we'll do a sagittal section to look at it, but the pituitary is here. So optic chiasm, and then right underneath we've got the pituitary gland. And then here we've got the pons, is this kind of first bump right here, and then you go into the medulla oblongata, and then this is the spinal cord down here. So when we do our mid-sagittal cut it like this. So from a mid-sagittal cut, if I put the pin here, you would tell me that's frontal lobe. So whether I put it here or I do it as a whole brain, shouldn't matter. Back here would be the parietal lobe, and then all the way back here would be the occipital lobe. Temporal lobe, I would have to come out here on the lateral side to label temporal lobe. You can see the corpus callosum is this top band of white right here. It's not this bottom band right here. That's another group of axons. It's that top band of white right there is the corpus callosum. And then we've got, just see which side is better. This side is actually better for most of it, so I'll use this side. That side you can see the pituitary gland. And the reason you don't have things paired is because it wasn't a true mid-sagittal cut when they did this. They did it slightly off-center, and that's why you can't see everything completely paired. But if we come back here again, that thin white band right there is the corpus callosum. I'll do the ventricles last. So then we come down here, we've got our optic chiasm, so optic nerve, and then where it crosses, optic chiasm. It's nice and white because those are just axons. And I use that optic chiasm as a point of reference because when you find that and you come straight back, you're in the hypothalamus. Okay, so this is the hypothalamus. And in the hypothalamus, you have the mammillary body, which is this little circle right here. And then hanging off of the hypothalamus would be the pituitary gland. And you can see that on this side better. So let me come back here. So we've got optic nerve, optic chiasm. We're in the hypothalamus right here. There's our mammillary body, and there's our pituitary gland hanging off of the hypothalamus.
Is that the infundibulum?
Yeah, that you really can't even, it's so hard to see on this. It's a tiny little bit of tissue.
What's that front circuit?
This one?
That's the optic case.
That's the optic, yeah. Okay. So that's your pituitary gland. And glands generally tend to be a little bit darker in color because they're glandular tissue, not neural tissues. They're usually a little bit darker. Okay. So I'm going to come back to this guy because I like this one a little bit better. So again, there's the optic chiasm. There's our mammillary body. The pituitary gland would be down here. Hypothalamus. This round area right here is the thalamus. So it usually looks like a little bit roundish. And then right here is the pineal gland. Pineal gland's usually pretty big in a sheep. And again, it's got kind of a brownish color to it, the pineal gland. If I'm questioning whether that's the pineal gland or not, the way I always tell is I look for my colliculi. The colliculi are actually in the brainstem. So this area is the diencephalon, the hypothalamus, the thalamus, and then the epithalamus where the pineal gland is. We go next into the brainstem, and again, I'll show you how the colliculi and the pineal gland come together. But so next we go into brainstem, and that would be from, let's say, here, kind of angled, because this is part of the hypothalamus. That's the mammillary body. So it kind of goes like this, down is brainstem. So from here to here is the midbrain, or the mesencephalon. So this right here is the midbrain, or the mesencephalon. This first bulge right here is the pons, so this would be the pons. And then down here is the medulla oblongata, and then you go into spinal cord. So the way I usually do it is I look here where the cerebellum kind of starts, and I come straight across, and that's where the pons begins. And then where the cerebellum ends, if I come straight across, that's where the medulla oblongata ends. So I kind of use that as a point of reference. So pons, medulla oblongata. Then you're in spinal cord. Now let's come back up here to the midbrain, which is this area right here. And if you take the cerebellum and pull it down, you can see the colliculi really nicely. So you've got the superior colliculi and the inferior colliculi. And those colliculi are part of the midbrain, or the mesencephalon. So superior colliculi, inferior colliculi, right there. And I always look for the superior colliculi, and right above it will be the pineal gland. Different brain regions, but I use it as a point of reference. Pineal gland is in the diencephalon, colliculi are in the mesencephalon.
Are the colliculi the only parts of the mesencephalon that we have to label?
Mm-hmm. Yep. You've got the cerebellum here, and the white would be the arbor vitae. And then we're ready to look at our ventricles. So the lateral ventricle is inside of here and inside of here. So you have two lateral ventricles in the cerebrum. So to put our probe in there, what I do is I find the corpus callosum, and then I put my probe under the corpus callosum, and I go straight back and then lift up, and I can feel that I'm in a space. That's the lateral ventricle in there. Okay. The third ventricle is right around the thalamus, right there. And you can see this dark material here. That's the choroid plexus that's in the third ventricle. That right there is the choroid plexus. So that would be your permeable capillaries and your glial cells, those ependymal cells. That is the choroid plexus. And those cells make CSF. You would find it in the lateral ventricles in here. You can actually see it here in the lateral ventricle. So that's the choroid plexus that's in the lateral ventricle. This is the choroid plexus in the third ventricle, and you would actually even have it in the fourth. Usually you do, oh, no, there it is. You can see it there in the fourth ventricle as well. Okay, so it's in all the ventricles. So lateral ventricle is inside of here. Third ventricle is here along the midline. Right in front of the colliculi is the cerebral aqueduct. Right there, you can just see part of it. It's right there. cerebral aqueduct, and then you're in the fourth ventricle, and from the fourth ventricle, you go into the central canal of the spinal cord. Yeah, that's it. Okay. Mhm.
What about the nerves, the other nerves, like oculomotor nerves, not
Only from the figure.
Only from the
Only from the figure.
Show again the corpus callosum and the fornix.
Fornix, you don't need to know.
Okay.
Corpus callosum is this line right here.
The
that-
thin one on top,
That
okay.
thin band of white. Those are the axons that are going across. So right there.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Are we going to